Have you ever had that feeling where you're screaming at the top of your lungs, but nobody can hear you?
Oh, that is the worst feeling.
Right. Like, imagine waking up in the middle of the night, you smell smoke, your house is on fire, you scramble for your phone, you dial emergency services, and you're just frantically screaming for help.
Just absolute panic.
Exactly. But the operator on the other end, they just keep hanging up on you. And why?
Yeah.
Because you're speaking Spanish, and their system only accepts calls in English.
Wow. Yeah.
So the fire is still burning.
Yeah.
You are communicating your emergency perfectly clearly, but because of this translation mismatch, no fire trucks are coming.
Which is just a terrifying scenario to even put yourself in.
It really is. But here's the thing. For thousands of vulnerable children walking into schools every single day, that exact type of translation error is basically their lived reality.
Yeah, and it's a profound shift in perspective when you look at it that way, because you're taking the burden of being understood completely off the person in distress, and you're putting the responsibility of translation entirely on the adult sitting across the desk.
Well, welcome to our deep dive. Today, we are opening up a really fascinating piece of source material to explore this incredibly high-stakes role. It's the Designated Safeguarding Lead, or the DSL.
Yeah, and if you are unfamiliar with that term, the DSL is the professional inside a school who is, legally and ethically responsible for child protection.
Right. But our source document looks at this heavy role through a totally unexpected lens. It basically asks, what can a safeguarding professional learn from a sign language interpreter?
Which, on the surface, sounds like we're mixing two completely unrelated professions.
Absolutely.
One is dealing with crisis intervention and child safety, and the other deals with pure linguistic translation.
Yeah.
But when you look at the fundamental mechanics of how humans express pain,
The overlap is staggering.
it really is. It's mind-blowing.
So our mission for this deep dive is to decode what we might call these invisible languages. The invisible languages people use to communicate distress.
Yeah, to figure out how we can ensure vulnerable voices are truly heard and not just, accidentally ignored because they aren't using the exact vocabulary the system demands.
Let's just jump right into it, because the core philosophy of a sign language interpreter is the perfect anchor here.
It really is. Interpreters operate on this fundamental truth. A person can be communicating perfectly with total fluency and yet remain completely isolated.
Wait, isolated even if they're fluent?
Exactly. This happens anytime the environment around them is built to recognize only one form of expression.
Ah, okay.
So if a deaf person is signing brilliantly, but the receptionist at the front desk only understands spoken English, the communication isn't failing. The interpretation is failing.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's not an absence of communication, it's an absence of understanding.
Yeah.
It's like tuning your car radio to FM when the emergency broadcast is going out on AM.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
Right. The music is playing loudly, the signal is pumping through the air at maximum volume. You might sit there thinking the station is completely dead, but you're just failing to pick it up. The signal is bouncing right off your antenna.
And if we map that AM/FM concept onto a school environment, the implications for child safety are massive.
Because the adults are on the wrong frequency.
Exactly. Adults operate on the FM dial. We are just naturally conditioned to expect what safeguarding professionals call explicit disclosures.
Right, the sit-down meeting.
Yes. We expect the student to walk into a quiet office, sit down, make eye contact, and use these calm chronological words to say, I am experiencing this specific trauma at home.
We want the clean HR-style incident report. We want the data packaged neatly.
We really do. But a kid in the middle of a crisis is almost never broadcasting on that FM frequency.
Because they can't, right.
Biologically, they often literally cannot. If we look at the neurology of trauma, when a human being is in severe distress, the prefrontal cortex—
That's the logic center, right?
Right, the part responsible for logical sequencing and complex vocabulary, that part frequently just shuts down. And the amygdala, which is the threat detection center, takes over.
Oh, wow.
So a traumatized child doesn't have access to the pristine vocabulary required to articulate a complex abuse scenario, so they communicate indirectly.
Through behavior.
Exactly. Behavioral changes, emotional spikes, nonverbal cues.
So if the prefrontal cortex is offline and the explicit words just aren't coming, what is the AM signal we should be looking for? Give us the behavioral vocabulary.
It manifests in extremes, usually.
Yeah.
You might see a sudden, complete withdrawal from social groups.
Like a vibrant kid who just goes quiet.
Turns totally invisible, yeah. On the flip side, it can look like unexplained aggression. A minor playground disagreement results in a massive, disproportionate, violent outburst.
Right.
Or you see shifts in baseline patterns. A student who suddenly develops a severe panic response to, like, a specific substitute teacher.
Wait, and it can also look like humor, right?
Yes, paradoxically, it can look like hypervigilant humor. The class clown who starts using rapid-fire jokes to control the room, mask deep discomfort or, deflect an adult's attention away from the fact that they are wearing a long-sleeved winter coat in the middle of May.
So the kid throwing a desk in the back of the room or the kid derailing the math lesson with jokes might actually be desperately screaming for help.
Desperately.
But the adult in the room misdiagnoses it entirely. They log it as a discipline issue, totally missing the disclosure because they were waiting for a polite conversation.
And that is the tragedy of the mismatched frequency. Safeguarding failures frequently happen not because the child hid the abuse, but because the adult's interpretation of the behavior was just woefully inadequate.
They expected trauma to sound calm.
Exactly.
Just knowing that someone could be frantically waving red flags and the system is just punishing them for the color of the fabric, that is a really heavy realization.
It's sobering.
But let's say we get this right. We recognize the behavioral shift, we sit the kid down, and we finally get them to talk. The story comes out, but it's messy, it's fragmented, it's confusing.
As trauma usually is.
Right. And our immediate instinct as humans is to jump in and fix it. It's like smartphone autocorrect.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah. When you type a rushed, panicked text message with weird grammar, your phone automatically guesses what you meant, and it smooths it out into a polite, readable sentence. We naturally want to be that helpful editor and summarize their messy story.
Right. And what's fascinating here is that this brings us to the most crucial lesson. The safeguarding lead must steal from the sign language interpreter.
Okay, what is it?
That autocorrect instinct, that desire to be a helpful editor, is incredibly dangerous in high-stakes environments.
Really?
Yes. Professional interpreters have an absolute rule. They never embellish, they do not filter a speaker's words emotionally, and they never, ever reshape the meaning to fit their own assumptions.
Not even to make it clear for the listener.
Never. If a speaker is disjointed and rambling, the interpreter delivers disjointed rambling. If the speaker is furious, the interpreter conveys fury without softening the edges.
But wait, I can hear people pushing back on this premise. Isn't it just human nature to try to make sense of a fragmented story?
It is human nature, but
I mean, if you're a professional trying to build a case file for Child Protective Services, isn't it your job to synthesize? If a kid talks for an hour about a fight with their dad, why shouldn't I just write down the student was clearly feeling overwhelmed and angry about her father's strict discipline? It saves everyone time.
because the moment you introduce that summary, you are no longer preserving the student's voice. You have effectively replaced their reality with your own emotional narrative.
Oh, I see.
You are assuming you know the depth of what strict discipline means to her, which you do not.
Wow.
The source material emphasizes that DSLs must rigorously distinguish observation from interpretation. You never write down the student was furious and overreacting.
What do you write instead?
You write down verbatim quotes. You write, "The student crossed her arms, stared at the floor, and said, 'If I go back there tonight, he is going to finish what he started.'" You record the exact words and physical actions.
Okay, when you lay it out like that, the summary version actually strips away the evidence.
Completely.
You are sanitizing the threat level just to make paperwork cleaner.
You are sanitizing it, and, more importantly, you are destroying the foundation of trust. Trust depends entirely on faithful representation.
Because if they find out you changed their story.
Exactly. Imagine the psychological blow to a vulnerable student who finally musters the courage to share this deeply painful reality. If they find out the adult just boxed up their trauma into a neat little sanitized summary that missed the actual point, they feel profoundly invalidated.
Yeah, if they feel their story was distorted to fit the adult's comfort level, the system has proven it can't handle their truth.
And they will simply never disclose again.
They'll look at the auto-corrected version of their trauma, realize you didn't actually hear them at all, and just shut the radio off entirely.
Precisely. A strong, safeguarding leader listens meticulously before putting pen to paper. They avoid rushing to conclusions just to make the administrative side easier.
So to maintain trust, we have to listen without adding our own emotions or showing bias. But hold on, I want to challenge the interpreter analogy here for a second.
Go for it.
Because there's a tension here that feels unresolved. If I'm a kid and I just told you my absolute darkest secret, maybe something horrific happening at home,
Yeah.
and you just sit across from me with a totally straight face, taking verbatim notes like a clinical robot, I'm going to feel completely alienated. Emotional neutrality sounds an awful lot like emotional coldness. Doesn't that lack of reaction destroy the trust?
It is a brilliant question, and it trips up a lot of well-meaning professionals who think empathy requires visible distress. But we have to look at the mechanism behind the interpreter's behavior.
Okay.
An interpreter remains calm and precise not because they don't care, but because accuracy in the face of intense trauma requires intense discipline.
So it's about focus.
Right. If the interpreter breaks down crying, the communication channel collapses. The focus shifts from the victim's story to the interpreter's emotions.
Ah, so it's about not making yourself the center of the crisis.
Yes. And for the safeguarding lead, staying emotionally grounded serves a profound psychological purpose. We really have to view this from the child's perspective.
Okay, put me in their shoes.
When a child shares something horrific, they are heavily monitoring the adult's reaction. They are terrified of what this information is going to do to the room.
Because it's a huge burden.
Exactly. If the adult reacts with visible panic, if they gasp or start crying or show dramatic outrage, it sends a catastrophic message to the child.
It tells the child this secret is so toxic and massive that it just broke the adult who is supposed to be in charge.
That is exactly their internal monologue. They think, if my reality just destroyed this professional, my situation is truly hopeless.
Wow.
But if the safeguarding lead maintains a controlled tone, avoids visible shock, and holds a space of calm professionalism, it achieves the opposite. It creates genuine safety.
Relational steadiness.
Yes, it proves to the student that the adult is a safe container, strong enough to carry the burden of their disclosure without shattering.
So by not letting your own emotional shock flood the room, you're implicitly telling the kid, I hear you, I believe you, and this is manageable. We can handle this.
Exactly.
That is a completely different definition of empathy. It's not about crying with them. It's about providing a sturdy floor for them to stand on.
It is disciplined empathy, and it requires an immense amount of self-regulation on the part of the adult.
Okay, the interpreter analogy has held up beautifully so far. We are tuning into the AM frequency of behavior. We are recording verbatim without autocorrecting, and
Right.
we're maintaining a neutral, safe container.
Right.
But, and I think this is where the analogy hits a brick wall, so what does this all mean? Do we just accurately translate a kid's distress, log it in a neat little file, and walk away?
Definitely not.
Because if I am in a burning building and I tell an interpreter, the hallway is on fire, their only job is to translate those words to the deaf person next to me. They don't grab a fire extinguisher.
Right.
A safeguarding lead isn't just a passive tape recorder. If we just log the trauma and walk away, we have fundamentally failed at keeping that kid alive.
You have just highlighted what the source material refers to as the honest bit. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is the most critical pivot in the entire document.
So the analogy breaks on purpose.
Yes, this is where the analogy shatters by design, revealing the true weight of the safeguarding role. An interpreter's mandate ends at the facilitation of communication. A DSL's mandate requires active protection and intervention.
Because a school isn't just a diplomatic summit where you pass notes. There's a massive power dynamic at play, and the system itself is often a threat to the child.
And that power dynamic is the key. What safeguarding professionals must absolutely reject is the idea of being mere passive conduits. Students are not just messages to be transmitted to a filing cabinet.
They need an advocate.
Safeguarding requires ethical advocacy. You have to recognize that certain populations depend entirely on someone else to force their voice into a system that was built to exclude them. Without an active fighting advocate, those voices are silenced by bureaucracy.
Let's get specific on that. Who are the populations that the system naturally filters out? Because, a highly articulate high school senior probably knows how to navigate the administration. Who are we really talking about here?
We are talking about the most vulnerable layers of the student body, younger students who literally lack the developmental vocabulary to explain abuse.
Right.
We're talking about English as an additional language, or EAL learners who face immense linguistic barriers. We're looking at neurodivergent students whose behavioral cues deeply violate neurotypical expectations of good behavior.
And trauma survivors.
Yes, students crippled by deep trauma or systemic poverty. They rely entirely on human-centered leadership.
Let's walk through a concrete scenario of what this ethical advocacy actually looks like in practice. Let's take that young kid we mentioned earlier. Maybe he's an EAL learner with a chaotic, unsafe home life.
Okay.
He doesn't have the words, his amygdala is hijacked, and he throws a heavy chair across the classroom. The school's behavioral policy activates. The principal wants an immediate 3-day suspension because throwing furniture violates the code of conduct. What does the passive translator do versus the ethical advocate?
The passive translator writes up a perfectly accurate verbatim report of the chair throwing, hands it to the principal, and watches the child get suspended. They did their job of logging the event.
They translated the action.
Right. But the ethical advocate, the true safeguarding leader, steps directly into the path of the bureaucracy. They take that verbatim documentation, they translate that thrown chair as a desperate distress signal, and they actively fight the disciplinary board.
They act as the fire extinguisher. They look at the principal and say, you are treating an AM radio signal like an FM discipline problem.
They push back on the system itself. They argue, this is not willful defiance, this is a trauma response. Suspending this child sends them back to the exact abusive environment causing the behavior. We need to trigger social services, not a detention.
Wow.
The DSL uses their institutional power to amplify the child's true message, ensuring the outcome is protection rather than institutional punishment.
That requires incredible courage. You aren't just listening to the kid. You are actively fighting the adult structures that want to take the easy way out.
It demands a systemic cultural shift. It means building developmental pathways where every staff member, from the cafeteria workers to the math teachers, is trained in emotional literacy.
So no child is lost just because they use a different language of distress.
Exactly. True advocacy is listening meticulously, translating faithfully, and then using your own leverage to force the system to respond appropriately.
Let's bring this all together for you, the listener. We've covered some incredibly heavy systemic concepts today, but the core mechanics apply to how we all process human behavior.
They really do.
First, do not assume that a lack of clear words means a lack of communication. Silence, withdrawal, and aggression are loud languages if you know how to listen. You have to watch for the AM frequency.
Yeah.
Second, when you do finally see the signal, kill your inner autocorrect. Do not overwrite someone's messy, fragmented story with your own comfortable assumptions. Preserve their actual reality.
That's vital.
And third, remember that holding a calm, grounded space for someone in crisis is not coldness. It is the ultimate form of disciplined empathy. It proves you are a safe container for their truth.
Those principles are the bedrock of professional safeguarding. But I want to offer a final thought that takes these mechanics completely out of the school bureaucracy and drops them right into your living room.
Oh, taking the professional lens and turning it inward, I have a feeling this is going to be an uncomfortable pivot.
It requires some honest reflection. We've discussed translation and distress in the context of extreme trauma, but consider your own personal life. Think about your family, your closest friends, or your romantic partner. If interpreting distress correctly demands that we learn someone's unique, invisible language, what happens when two people sharing a life are unknowingly speaking completely different invisible languages of stress?
Oh, wow.
When your partner is overwhelmed, do they withdraw, get quiet, and need isolation, while you process stress by getting loud, venting, and needing immediate dialogue?
So you might look at their silence and just assume they are shutting you out or that they don't care about the problem.
Precisely. Are you assuming apathy simply because they aren't using your preferred vocabulary of distress? Are you misinterpreting the behavior of the person closest to you, causing unnecessary conflict, simply because you're stubbornly waiting for them to broadcast on your frequency?
That is a massive question to carry forward. Are we failing to hear the people we love the most just because we are demanding they use our language? We are going to leave you to chew on that one. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it helps you tune your dials a little differently today, both out in the world and inside your own home. Until next time, keep listening. And remember, just because you don't hear a shout doesn't mean someone isn't calling out.